Welcome back to the deep dive that is going to completely rewrite everything you thought you knew about the Breaking Bad universe, because today we are tackling a scenario so massive and so mind-blowing that it threatens to unravel the entire fabric of the show as we know it. We are talking about the ultimate what-if scenario that changes the destiny of Walter White, the fate of the Salamanca family, and the history of the drug trade in the American Southwest. We are asking the question that haunts every hardcore fan who has ever analyzed the tragic backstory of the Chicken Man. What if Gustavo Fring never met Don Eladio? What if that fateful meeting by the pool in Mexico never happened? To understand the sheer magnitude of this change, we first have to go back, way back, to the moment that birthed the monster. We have to talk about the trauma, the blood, and the secret history that made Gus who he is. Picture the scene, because it is etched into our memories forever. It is 1989. The yellow filter of the Mexican flashback is heavy on the screen, screaming nostalgia and danger. We are at the beautiful hacienda of Don Eladio Fuente. The water in the pool is crystal clear, a stark contrast to the dirty business being discussed poolside. Here we have a younger, slightly less guarded Gus Fring and his partner, the brilliant Maximino Arquiniega. They are Los Pollos Hermanos, the Chicken Brothers, and they are there to pitch a deal that they think is undeniable. They have produced the highest quality methamphetamine the cartel has ever seen. They are offering a product so superior to the garbage the cartel is pushing that they believe they are untouchable. They think their genius protects them, but they are wrong. They are dead wrong. This moment is the big bang of the Breaking Bad timeline. Everything we see in the show, every explosion, every death, every blue crystal shard ripples out from this single afternoon. Hector Salamanca, with that legendary sneer and that iconic disdain for anyone who is not blood, pulls the trigger. One shot. Max falls. The blood swirls in the pool water, and Gus Fring is forced to the ground, staring into the dead eyes of the only person he ever truly loved. It is absolutely heartbreaking, but it is also the forge that creates the villain we all love to fear. That moment killed the human part of Gus and left only the cold, calculating machine bent on revenge. But hold on a second. Pause the tape. Rewind. Let us take a step back and look at the insane variables that brought them there. Why did they go? It was hubris. It was ambition. It was the belief that talent outweighs brutality. But what if they had made a different choice? What if Gus, with all his mysterious background and his cautious nature, had decided that the risk was simply too high? Imagine a world where Gus and Max sit down in their original chicken shop in Mexico or even back in Chile and decide that the cartel is a beast they do not want to poke. This is where the theory gets absolutely crazy, because to understand what happens if they do not meet Eladio, we have to look at the biggest secret in the entire series. Who was Gus Fring in Chile? This is the breadcrumb trail that Vince Gilligan left for us, and it is the key to this entire alternate reality. Remember that chilling moment when Don Eladio looks at Gus after killing Max? He spares Gus. He kills the partner, but he leaves Gus alive. Why? He tells him explicitly that the only reason he is alive is because he knows who Gus is. He says, I know who you are, but you are not in Chile anymore. That line sends shivers down the spine of every fan because it implies a history so dark and so powerful that even a Mexican cartel boss respects it. The theories are legendary. Was Gus a general in the Pinochet regime? Was he part of the secret police? The term generalissimo gets thrown around in the fandom constantly. If Gus never meets Eladio, if he never seeks that meeting to sell meth, he remains that mysterious figure. Without the humiliating trauma of Max's death, Gus does not have that singular, obsessive drive for revenge that defines his entire existence in the show. The Gus we know is a man hollowed out by grief, filling the void with an empire designed solely to destroy the cartel. But a Gus who never meets Eladio is a completely different animal. This is a Gus who still has Max. This is a Gus who is not motivated by vengeance, but perhaps by pure ambition or survival. Let us play this out. Suppose they skip the meeting. They realize that Hector Salamanca is a loose cannon and Don Eladio is an egomaniac. They take their genius intellects and their chemistry know-how, and they go a different route. Maybe they go straight to the United States. They bypass the Mexican cartel entirely. This is where the what if becomes a game changer for the global drug trade. In the canon timeline, Gus uses the cartel's infrastructure to build his own. He plays the long game, hiding in plain sight as a loyal earner while plotting their demise. But without that initial connection, Gus and Max are independent contractors. They are wild cards. Imagine two geniuses arriving in Albuquerque, or perhaps Miami or Los Angeles in the late 80s or early 90s. They have a product that is 99% pure, years before Walter White ever picks up a flask. Without the cartel's heavy hand weighing them down, do they become the kings of meth on their own terms? It is a mind-blowing possibility. They could have built an empire that rivaled the cartel not from within, but from the outside. But here is the catch, and it is a fascinating one. Without the cartel's protection in the early days, they are vulnerable. The reason Gus survived long enough to become a kingpin is that he made himself indispensable to Eladio before he turned on him. Alone in the U.S., without the generalissimo reputation to shield him or the cartel connection to legitimize him, Gus and Max would be fighting a war on all fronts. However, let us look at the character of Gus again. He is cautious. He is meticulous. He is a ghost. If he never meets Eladio, he never starts the feud with the Salamancas. Think about the domino effect of that. No feud with the Salamancas means Hector never comes to the chicken shop to intimidate him. It means the cousins, those terrifying axe-wielding silent assassins, never have a vendetta against the chicken man. It means that the entire northern front of the cartel's operation looks completely different. In our beloved series, the tension between Gus and the Salamancas is the engine that drives the plot of Better Call Saul and the background of Breaking Bad. Remove that and you have a massive power vacuum. Who fills it? This is where it gets really dark. If Gus is not there to check the Salamancas, to outsmart them and eventually wipe them out, the Salamancas run unchecked. Imagine a version of Albuquerque run entirely by the chaotic, violent, impulsive Salamanca family. Tuco is not just a mid-level distributor. He is the king. Hector is not a wheelchair-bound invalid dinging a bell. He is the active, brutal patriarch, overseeing a messy, loud, and bloody empire. The streets are not clean and organized like they are under Gus. They are a war zone. And what about Max? This is the emotional core of our what if. If they never meet Eladio, Max lives. We know very little about Max other than he was a chemist and he was the love of Gus's life. We can assume he was the heart to Gus's brain. He was the one who believed in the product, the artist. With Max alive, does Gus ever become the monster? There is a strong argument to be made that Max was Gus's moral compass. The tragedy of the pool scene is not just that Max died, but that Gus's humanity died with him. If Max is still by his side, perhaps Gus remains a businessman, a legitimate restaurateur who dabbles in the gray market but never goes full Scarface. Maybe Los Pollos Hermanos becomes just a really successful chicken franchise. Can you imagine that? A world where Gus Fring is just a really good boss who demands high standards for fryer grease and nothing else? It sounds funny, but it is a genuine possibility. Or, and this is the darker theory, maybe Max was just as ambitious. Maybe together they were a binary star system of intellect and ruthlessness. If they had bypassed Eladio, they might have built a meth empire that was even more efficient, even more scientific, and even more untouchable, because it was not built on blood revenge. It would be built on pure capitalism. Let us consider the general theory again, because it is too juicy to ignore. If Gus does not go to Mexico to pitch the cartel, maybe he stays in Chile a little longer, or maybe the reason he left Chile in the first place forces his hand. We know he erased his past. A man who does not exist, as Hank Schrader eventually finds out. If he does not link up with the cartel, he has to hide on his own. The cartel provided a massive, albeit dangerous umbrella. Without it, Gus is exposed to whatever forces were hunting him from Santiago. This adds a layer of thriller tension to this timeline. Gus Fring, on the run from Pinochet's hunters, trying to set up a life with Max in the United States, looking over his shoulder not for the DEA, but for Chilean assassins. That is a spin-off show I would watch in a heartbeat. It flips the genre from a crime drama to a political thriller. The skills Gus displays, the surveillance, the counterintelligence, the handling of his men, all scream intelligence officer. In this timeline, he might have to use those skills just to survive, not to sell drugs. But let us be real. Gus is a shark. He is not going to just sell chicken sandwiches. The insane potential of the blue meth, or the clear meth as it was back then before Walt, is too high. If they don't meet Eladio, they inevitably meet someone else. Maybe they meet the neon Nazis sooner? No, that's too low level. Maybe they go to the European market. We know Lydia Rodart Quayle was crucial in the canon timeline for expansion. Imagine Gus and Max taking their product directly to the Czech Republic, skipping the American Southwest entirely. They become global kingpins, operating out of a headquarters in Berlin or Prague, totally bypassing the DEA, Hank, and the entire cast of Breaking Bad. Walter White gets cancer, starts cooking in his RV, tries to sell to Crazy 8, and, well, without Gus's super lab to eventually aspire to, Walt's ceiling is much lower. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. We need to focus on the immediate aftermath of No Eladio. The absence of the Gus Eladio meeting creates a massive ripple in the timeline of the cartel itself. Remember, Gus was the one who eventually decapitated the cartel. He poisoned the entire leadership. It was one of the most epic moments in television history. Salud, screaming in our minds. If Gus never meets Eladio, Eladio lives. Juan Bolsa lives. The cartel remains a unified, powerful monolith. They continue to dominate the border without the internal rot that Gus introduced. They are stronger, but they are also stupider. They lack Gus's logistical genius. They are relying on mules, on trucks, on risky border crossings. They don't have the laundry super lab. They don't have the Madrigal electromotive connection shipping pure precursors. This means the overall supply of meth in the Southwest is lower quality and harder to move. This creates a market that is starving for purity, a market that is waiting for a certain high school chemistry teacher, but a market that is much more dangerous because the gatekeepers are not a polite businessman in a suit, but violent thugs like Tuco and Hector. This brings us to a fascinating point about the butterfly effect. The meeting at the pool was the catalyst for the hatred that fueled Gus for 20 years. That hatred made him patient. It made him perfect. Without that hatred, is Gus as effective? Is he as sharp? There is a theory that trauma heightens the senses, that the need for revenge gave Gus a supernatural focus. Without it, maybe he gets sloppy. Maybe he and Max get caught by the DEA in a routine bust because they didn't have the paranoid level of security that the Chicken Man developed. Or maybe, just maybe, they are happy. And in the world of Breaking Bad, happiness is usually a death sentence. But the idea of a happy Gus and Max living their lives, cooking the best chicken and the best meth, is a strange, alternate paradise that feels almost wrong to think about. It feels illegal to imagine Gus smiling a genuine smile that isn't a mask, but we have to go back to the general. The mystery of Chile is the dark cloud hanging over this entire what if. If he doesn't meet Eladio, does the past catch up? In the canon, Eladio uses Gus's past as a reason to spare him, but also as a leash. I know who you are. It is a threat. If Gus is on his own, that threat is gone, but the protection is gone too. He is a man without a country and without a patron. This isolation would force Gus and Max to be even more creative. They would have to build their own distribution from scratch. No Los Pollos trucks hiding product in batter mix buckets. They would have to invent a whole new system. And knowing Gus, it would be genius. It would be something we can't even predict. Maybe they use a different front. Maybe they infiltrate a different industry. Los Motores Hermanos? A car wash empire? The irony would be delicious. So, the stage is set. We have a world where Max is alive. Eladio is alive and powerful. The Salamancas are the undisputed kings of the Albuquerque underworld, unchecked by Gus's subtle machinations. Gus and Max are wild cards, potential competitors, or perhaps ghosts in the wind. The board has been reset. The pieces are in completely different positions, and the tension is building because two massive forces, the brilliance of the Chicken Brothers and the brutality of the cartel, are existing in the same universe, but haven't collided yet. In this timeline, the collision wouldn't happen at a pool with a glass of tequila. It would happen on the streets, over territory, over product. And without the element of surprise that Gus had in the canon, the Trojan horse of being an employee. The war would be open, loud, and absolutely legendary. But there is one specific character whose fate is tied directly to Gus's rise within the cartel, a character whose life is a tragedy of its own, and who becomes the ultimate weapon in Gus's arsenal. I am talking about Mike Ehrmantraut, the fixer, the grandpa with the sniper rifle. In our timeline, Mike works for Gus because Gus offers him stability and money, and eventually a strange kind of respect. But if Gus never meets Eladio, never builds the super lab, never needs a head of security for a cartel operation, does he ever meet Mike? Does Mike just stay a dirty ex-cop doing odd jobs for Saul Goodman? Or does fate bring them together in a different way? And what about the chemistry, the blue stuff? We are just scratching the surface of this alternate reality. The survival of Max Arcaniega is the key that unlocks a Pandora's box of changes. We have established the new playing field. The cartel is strong, but primitive. Gus is independent, but vulnerable. And the Salamancas are hungry wolves without a leash. Now, we have to look at the immediate next steps. What do Gus and Max do the day after they decide not to go to the hacienda? Where do they go? And how does their presence in the U.S., unaffiliated, unconnected, but brilliant, start to disrupt the balance of power long before Walter White ever buys an RV? This is where the story truly diverges into chaos. We are about to witness the rise of an empire that shouldn't exist, and the survival of a man who was destined to die. The ghosts of the past are still chasing them, but the future is a blank slate waiting to be written in crystal blue. The pool remains clean, the tequila remains corked, and the chicken man is about to become something else entirely. Something potentially even more dangerous. We are now deep inside the rabbit hole, friends, and the landscape is looking totally different. We have established the ground zero of this alternate reality. Gus Fring and Max Arcaniega, the dynamic duo, the binary stars of the myth underworld, have walked away from the pool. They have ghosted Don Eladio. They have taken their brilliance, their chemistry, and their unbreakable bond, and they have planted their flag on American soil as independent operators. Now, we have to look at the immediate fallout of this decision, and it is absolutely insane to think about how this changes the power dynamics of the Breaking Bad universe. Without the heavy, suffocating hand of the Juarez cartel holding their leash, Gus and Max are free to build their empire exactly how they want. And this is where we have to talk about a secret weapon that most fans overlook, a hidden connection that exists independent of the Mexican cartel. We have to talk about Santiago. We have to talk about Peter Schuler. You remember Peter, right? The nervous, suicidal executive from Madrigal Electromotive in Breaking Bad? The guy who dipped a chicken nugget into the franchise sauce before ending it all? His backstory with Gus is legendary and mysterious. Canon implies they experienced something traumatic together in Chile. This connection is the ace in the hole for our independent Gus. In the original timeline, Eladio eventually leveraged this connection for his own gain. But in our what-if scenario, Gus bypasses Mexico and goes straight to his old friend Peter. This is a game-changer of epic proportions. Imagine Gus and Max arriving in the U.S., not as humble servants of the cartel, but as partners with a massive German conglomerate from day one. They don't need Eladio's money to start Los Pollos Hermanos. They have Madrigal. This means the infrastructure is cleaner, faster, and infinitely more corporate. They aren't smuggling drugs in cantaloupes through rugged desert terrain. They are shipping precursors through legitimate global shipping lanes. They are hiding in plain sight, but on a level that makes the original operation look like a lemonade stand. With Max alive, the division of labor is pure genius. Gus is the CEO, the face, the meticulous planner, who ensures every napkin is folded correctly. Max is the artist, the Walt before Walt, hidden away in a lab that is probably funded by German euros, perfecting a recipe that is decades ahead of its time. But here is the twist that adds a layer of beautiful, tragic complexity to this timeline. In the original show, Gus is a machine. He's cold, dead inside, fueled only by the red-hot coal of revenge. He doesn't fear death because he feels he died at that pool in 1989. But in this timeline, Max is alive. Gus has something to lose. This is a massive psychological shift. A Gus Fring who is in love, who has his partner by his side, is a Gus Fring who feels fear, not fear for himself, but fear for Max. This changes his risk assessment. He might be more conservative, more protective. He wouldn't be the guy walking into sniper fire in Better Call Saul just to prove a point. He would be the guy building a fortress. This makes him arguably more dangerous because a man protecting his family is far more unpredictable than a man seeking revenge. He isn't trying to die. He's trying to live. Now, let's look at the map. Albuquerque is still the destination. It's destiny. It's the hub. But the political landscape of the ABQ underworld is a nightmare scenario without Gus's stabilizing influence from the shadows. In the canon, Gus slowly, quietly corralled the street dealers. He kept things relatively orderly. Without him playing the cartel's game, the North is the Wild West. And who is the sheriff of this chaotic town? Hector Salamanca. We have to talk about Hector. Before the wheelchair, before the bell, Hector was a terrifying force of nature. In this timeline, he hasn't been pacified by Gus's long con. He is active, he is brutal, and he is running the Albuquerque territory for Eladio with an iron fist. The Salamancas, Tuco, the twins, maybe even Lalo sooner than we think, are the undisputed kings of the street. They are pushing the cartel's inferior product, stepping on it, cutting it, making a mess. So, here comes the conflict, the collision course. Gus and Max open Los Pollos Hermanos in Albuquerque. The chicken is delicious. The brand is strong. But secretly, they start moving their superior product. It's the Pepsi challenge of meth. On one side, you have the Salamanca's dirty, chili powder-laced garbage. On the other side, you have Max Arquiniega's glass-grade crystal. The streets talk. The junkies know. The market shifts overnight. This isn't just business. This is an insult to the Salamanca honor. Hector Salamanca is not a man who looks at a spreadsheet and says, "Oh, well, we lost market share." No, he is the guy who burns down the competitor. This sets up a war that is vastly different from the Cold War we saw in the show. This is a hot war, the Salamancas versus the Chicken Brothers. But the Salamancas don't know who they are dealing with. They see two polite men in dress shirts. They don't see the general. They don't see the Chilean ghost. This brings us to one of the most exciting what-if elements, the recruitment of Mike Ehrmantraut. This is the moment fans would kill to see. In the canon, Gus finds Mike through a series of events involving Saul and the cartel. But in this timeline, Gus needs security immediately. He knows the Salamancas are coming. He needs a professional. He needs a soldier. Picture this. Mike lands in Albuquerque, fresh from the trauma of his son's death in Philly, drinking himself into a stupor, looking for a reason to exist. He is a loose cannon, angry at the world. Gus Fring, with his supernatural ability to spot talent and pain, finds him. But the pitch is different. It's not about revenge or business. It's about protection. Gus introduces Mike to Max. He says, "I need you to keep him alive." Mike, who failed to save his own son, looks at these two men, this strange, brilliant couple fighting off a cartel, and he finds his purpose. He becomes Max's bodyguard. The relationship between Mike and Max would be fascinating. Mike, the gritty, cynical ex-cop, and Max, the idealistic chemist. It adds a layer of warmth to Mike's character that we only saw with his granddaughter Kaylee. With Mike on board early, the Fring Empire, or the independent Fring state, becomes a fortress. Mike trains a security detail that puts the cartel's thugs to shame. We are talking about military-grade tactics versus gangbanger brutality. When Tuco Salamanca inevitably smashes up Apollos Hermanos specifically to send a message, he doesn't just get a meeting with a polite owner. He gets Mike Ehrmantraut waiting in the dark. The escalation is mind-blowing. This creates a three-way tension: the Gus, Max, Mike faction, the Salamanca faction in ABQ, and the distant Don Eladio in Mexico, who is wondering why his profits in the north are tanking. Eladio is arrogant, but he isn't stupid. He sends Bolsa to investigate. But remember, Eladio doesn't own Gus in this timeline. He knows Gus is the general from Chile, but he has no leverage. He can't threaten to kill Max because Max is protected by a fortress of German-funded security and Mike's tactical genius. Let's pause and think about the butterfly effect on the DEA. This is huge. In the show, the DEA, Hank specifically, was chasing the cartel. Gus was invisible because he was the cartel's donation-giving friend. In this timeline, Gus is an outsider. Does this make him more suspicious or less? He still donates to the DEA fun runs. He still smiles at the backyard BBQs. But the violence on the streets is louder. The war between the Salamancas and the mystery competitor creates bodies. Hank Schrader, a younger, hungrier Hank, is going to be all over this. He's going to see a turf war. He might even root for the new guys because they are taking out the Salamancas, who are the DEA's public enemy number one. Imagine a world where Hank Schrader inadvertently protects Gus Fring's operation because he's so focused on taking down Hector. It's the ultimate irony. And what about the product itself? Without the super lab, which was built much later in the canon, where are they cooking? This is where the general intellect shines. They don't build a lab under a laundry immediately. Maybe they use the Madrigal connections to cook in an industrial chemical plant. Maybe they use a mobile system that puts the crystal ship to shame. The product is pure, and it's flooding the Southwest. This creates a gold rush effect. Low-level dealers are switching sides. The street-level discipline that Gus craves is being implemented by Mike. The blue, or whatever signature color Max chooses, maybe clear, representing purity, becomes the standard. There is a theory, a dark and crazy theory, that Max might not be the saint we think he is. We project innocence onto him because he died so young. But he was in the game. He was cooking meth. What if Max is actually the more aggressive one? What if Gus is the brake and Max is the gas? We can take them, Gustavo. We have the superior product. Imagine Gus trying to hold back Max's ambition. It flips the dynamic. Usually, we see Gus restraining others, like Walt. Seeing Gus trying to restrain Max would be a character study in love and fear. Every time Max wants to expand, Gus sees the pool. He sees the blood. He sees the risk. This tension between expansion and safety would be the heartbeat of this timeline. The Salamanca response to this rising threat would be legendary in its violence. Hector doesn't do half measures. He would call in the cousins earlier, those shiny suits and shiny axes arriving in Albuquerque in the mid-90s. Terrifying. But here is where the what if gets really spicy. If Hector attacks Gus and Max, he's attacking a ghost. Gus knows how to disappear. He knows how to use decoys. The Salamancas are fighting a conventional war. Gus is fighting an isometric war. He uses surveillance. He uses wiretaps. He likely knows what Hector is going to do before Hector knows it. This is where Gus's genius-level intellect destroys the brute force of the cartel. He frames the Salamancas. He plants evidence. He maybe even tips off the DEA anonymously. Officer Schrader, you might want to check the warehouse on 4th Street. Gus weaponizing the DEA against the Salamancas years before he did it to Walt. That is 4D chess. But we can't ignore the Eladio factor. Eventually the Don gets involved. He summons Gus. Come to Mexico. Let's talk. In the canon, Gus went and bowed. In this timeline, Gus politely declines. I am busy, Don Eladio, but perhaps we can come to an arrangement. This refusal, it is a declaration of independence. It is an insult that demands blood. Eladio cannot let two upstarts disrespect him, general or not. So Eladio puts a bounty on their heads. Now, every hitman from Juarez to Albuquerque is looking for the Chicken Brothers. The stakes are raised to a survival horror level. Gus and Max are living in a gilded cage. They are rich, they are successful, but they are hunted. This pressure cooker environment is what creates the diamond-hard resolve we see in Gus. But instead of hardening into a solo villain, they harden into a unit. Let's talk about the Easter egg potential here. Gale Boetticher. In the canon, Gus groomed Gale. With Max alive, does Gale ever enter the picture? Max is the chemist. He doesn't need a protege. Gale remains a weird, libertarian coffee enthusiast somewhere in academia, singing karaoke alone. Or maybe Max needs an assistant. Imagine Max and Gale geeking out over chemistry while Mike rolls his eyes in the corner. It's a sitcom waiting to happen inside a crime drama. But seriously, the absence of the need for a replacement cook fundamentally changes the future. It means there is no immediate vacancy for Walter White. When Walt breaks bad, there is no job opening. There is only competition. We are building toward a massive confrontation. The Salamancas are losing ground. They are bleeding money and respect. Hector is furious. He decides to take matters into his own hands. He doesn't send a nephew. He goes himself. He creates a trap. This is the moment where history could repeat itself or diverge wildly. Hector targets what Gus loves most. He targets Max. But this time, Gus is ready. This time, the chicken man has claws. The showdown isn't at a pool in Mexico. It's in the desert of New Mexico, under the vast starry sky. It's the Ozymandias of the pre-Breaking Bad era. The secrets of Gus's past in Chile would likely be weaponized here too. If Eladio sends assassins, Gus might reach out to his old contacts. We might finally see who he was. Does he call in a favor from a former death squad member? Does he utilize tradecraft that hasn't been seen since the Pinochet regime? The audience would finally get the answers to the Generalissimo mystery, not through flashbacks, but through present-day action. We would see Gus field stripping to weapon, setting traps, being the soldier he has hidden for so long. So, where does this leave us at the end of Chapter 2? We have a thriving, independent empire led by Gus and Max, backed by Madrigal, and protected by Mike. We have a furious, failing Salamanca family desperate to reclaim their throne. We have a DEA that is confused by the shifting tides of the drug war. And we have a looming threat from Mexico that is about to cross the border in force. The board is set for a war that will stain the sands of Albuquerque red. But the biggest question remains, in this war for survival, can Gus protect Max? Or is the tragedy of the pool inevitable, merely delayed by time and geography? Is Max Arcaniega destined to die so that Gus Fring can become the devil? The universe has a way of correcting itself, and the final destination logic might just be coming for the Chicken Brothers. The shadow of death is creeping closer, and no amount of German engineering or Mike Ehrmantraut's grunts can stop fate. Or can they? The temperature in the Albuquerque underworld is rising to a boiling point, and we are witnessing a war that makes the events of the original series look like a playground dispute. We have established the players, the independent, Madrigal-backed Fring Empire, versus the raw, chaotic brutality of the Salamanca family. But now, we have to talk about escalation. We have to talk about what happens when an immovable object meets an unstoppable force in a city that is too small for both of them. In the canon timeline, Gus played the role of the obedient servant for 20 years, hiding his hatred behind a smile. In this timeline, the mask is off. There is no bowing. There is no Don Eladio, please. There is only competition, and when you compete with the cartel, you don't get a cease and desist letter. You get a Molotov cocktail through your window. The mid-90s in this alternate ABQ is a war zone of shadow tactics versus terror tactics. The Salamancas, led by a fully mobile and furious Hector, are trying to burn Gus out. They are hitting distribution hubs, intimidating dealers, and making a loud, bloody mess. But they are swinging at ghosts. This is where Gus's general background becomes the absolute MVP of the scenario. Gus doesn't fight back with drive-by shootings. That is amateur hour. Gus fights with logistics. He fights with intelligence. Imagine a scene where Tuco Salamanca gathers a crew to hit a Fring warehouse pumped up on blue and adrenaline, screaming his iconic, "Tight, tight, tight." They kick down the doors, guns blazing, expecting a shootout. But the warehouse is empty. Not just empty of people, but scrubbed clean. No product, no money, just a single, neatly folded Los Pollos Hermanos napkin on a chair in the center of the room. It's a psychological strike. Gus is telling them, I see you. I am 10 steps ahead of you. While Tuco is screaming at an empty room, Mike Ehrmantraut is 3 miles away, watching through a sniper's scope, not to kill, but to document. They are building a file. They are playing 4D chess, while these Salamancas are playing checkers with hand grenades. This is the insane level of discipline that Mike brings to the table early on. In the show, Mike was often frustrated by the sloppiness of guys like Todd or the hubris of Walt. Here, he's working with a dream team. Gus listens. Max listens. It is the golden age of criminal competence. But the vacuum of power and the constant humiliation of the Salamancas triggers the arrival of the one character who can actually match Gus Fring's intellect. The character who terrifies us all with his charm. We are talking about Lalo Salamanca. In the original timeline, Lalo comes in late to clean up the mess. Here, the mess starts early. Hector realizes he is being outmaneuvered by the chicken man, so he calls in the closer. Lalo arriving in Albuquerque in the late 90s changes the entire genre of this story. It becomes a spy thriller. Lalo isn't going to kick down doors. He is going to smile. He is going to walk into Los Pollos Hermanos, order the number 4, and compliment the spice curls. The tension of a scene where Lalo sits across from Gus and Max, knowing they are enemies but playing the game of civility, would be mind-blowing. Lalo is the anti-Gus. He is chaotic charisma versus cold order. He perceives things that others miss. He would look at Max and see the weak link immediately. Not that Max is weak, but that Max is the heart. Lalo knows that to kill the beast, you don't cut off the head. You stab the heart. This brings us to the most fascinating character development arc of this what if, the corruption of Max Arquiniega. We always picture Max as the innocent victim, the martyr, but you don't get into the meth business by being a saint. As the war heats up, Max is changing. He is seeing the violence. He is seeing what is necessary to survive. In the canon, Gus shielded everyone from the ugly truth until it was too late. Here, Max is in the trenches. Does he recoil or does he harden? There is a crazy theory that Max might actually be the one pushing for more aggressive expansion. Imagine Max, the artist, getting offended that the Salamancas are stepping on his product, ruining his art. He might turn to Gus and say, "Do what you have to do." This permission from his soulmate releases the general completely. It validates Gus's darkest impulses. A Gus Fring who feels morally justified by his partner is a terrifying force. They are no longer just surviving. They are conquering. Let's look at the DEA's role in this chaotic ecosystem. Hank Schrader is a young agent climbing the ladder. The streets are flooded with the highest purity meth the world has ever seen, years before the Heisenberg era. The blue is already legendary. The DEA is baffled. They are looking for a super lab, but Gus and Max are likely using Madrigal's legitimate pharmaceutical infrastructure to synthesize the product. It's clean. It's corporate. Hank is chasing street dealers who are terrified of the ghost. He starts hearing whispers of a chicken man, but it seems too ridiculous to be true. However, because the Salamancas are so loud, the DEA focuses 90% of their energy on Hector and Tuco. This is the ultimate irony. The Salamancas are acting as a lightning rod, absorbing all the law enforcement heat, while Gus and Max operate in the cool shade. Gus might even be anonymously tipping off the DEA to Salamanca safe houses. Hello, DEA? I saw something suspicious. It's ruthless. It's genius. It's classic Fring. But Lalo is a detective. He starts digging into the past. He finds the holes in the general's story. He tracks down the Chilean connection. In the canon, Lalo went to Germany to find the truth about the super lab. In this timeline, maybe he goes to Santiago. Imagine an episode dedicated entirely to Lalo Salamanca, navigating the dangerous political underworld of post-Pinochet Chile, trying to find the file that proves who Gus really is. If Lalo finds the truth, that Gus was part of the regime, that he is a war criminal in hiding, he has leverage, not with the DEA, but with the cartel. He can go back to Eladio and say, this man is not just a rival. He is a threat to your sovereignty. He is a conqueror. This shifts the conflict from a turf war to an existential crisis. Eladio realizes that Gus isn't just trying to sell drugs. He's trying to replace the cartel entirely. Meanwhile, back in the lab, the chemistry is evolving. Without the constraints of the laundry, maybe Max and his team, possibly including a very young, very eager Gail Boeticher, are experimenting with new delivery methods. They aren't just making crystals. They are making a brand. They are the Apple of drugs. Sleek, reliable, expensive. This prices out the street junkies and attracts a higher class of clientele. This changes the social fabric of the show. We aren't just seeing meth heads in squalor. We are seeing Wall Street guys, lawyers, the elite. The epidemic spreads upwards. This makes the Fring empire incredibly wealthy, far wealthier than they were in Breaking Bad. They have FU money before Walt even buys his first house. And speaking of Walter White, we are approaching the critical year of 2008, but the world is different. The demand for a new cook is non-existent. The market is saturated with 99.1% pure product. If Walt gets cancer in this timeline, and he rides along with Hank, he doesn't see a bunch of amateurs making bathtub crank. He sees a highly sophisticated corporate machine. He sees a bag of blue that is chemically perfect. Does Walt break bad? Here is the mind-blowing twist. Walt might look at that product and feel inadequate. His ego is his driving force. If the blue meth is already the gold standard, Walt can't be the king. He can only be a copycat. Does his pride allow that? Or does he try to invent something else? Maybe he tries to create a product that is 99.9%? The Heisenberg ego might drive him to challenge the Chicken brothers, not for money, but for scientific dominance. This is sloppy, Walt might say, looking at Max's product, finding the one tiny flaw that only he can see. But before we get to Walt, we have to deal with the climax of the Lalo versus Gus arc. Lalo makes his move. He doesn't attack the warehouse. He doesn't attack the trucks. He attacks the heart. He stages an ambush at Gus's home. We have never really seen Gus's home life in the canon other than that one-stage dinner for Walt. But here, he lives with Max. It's a sanctuary. Lalo breaches the perimeter. This is where Mike earns every penny of his paycheck. The firefight in Gus's suburban home would be an epic set piece. Glass shattering, silence followed by controlled bursts of fire. Gus isn't hiding in a panic room. He is armed. The general comes out. We see Gus Fring tactical, moving with precision, defending his partner. Lalo is laughing, enjoying the chaos, taunting them. Chicken man, come out and play. It's horror movie stuff. The aftermath of this attack is the turning point. They survive, but the illusion of safety is shattered. Max is shaken. He realizes that as long as the Salamancas breathe, they are dead men walking. This pushes Max to cross the line. He looks at Gus and says the words that seal their fate. Kill them all. Not just Hector, not just Lalo. All of them. The entire cartel. In the original show, Gus wanted them to suffer. He wanted to torture Hector. Here, the goal is extermination. It's not about revenge. It's about pest control. This creates a much more aggressive timeline. Gus starts planning the red wedding of the cartel years in advance. He starts importing poison. He starts buying off the federales in Mexico. He is preparing for a decapitation strike. But there is a loose end, a wild card. Saul Goodman, Jimmy McGill. In this timeline, he is still the criminal lawyer, but his relationship with the cartel is different. He is Lalo's bagman, terrified, caught in the middle. But Gus sees value in him. Gus needs a face for the legal side of his legitimate war. He approaches Saul. Imagine the meeting between Gus, Max, and Saul Goodman. Saul cracking jokes, sweating profusely, while Gus stares at him with those dead, shark eyes. Mr. Goodman, I have a proposition. Gus buys Saul. He turns him into a double agent. Saul becomes the conduit of misinformation to the Salamancas. This puts Kim Wexler in danger much earlier. Does Kim survive in this timeline? Or does she get caught in the crossfire of a war that is much hotter than the one in Better Call Saul? If Gus uses Kim as leverage against Saul, it adds a layer of darkness to his character that is hard to stomach. Let's pause and consider the what if of the super lab. In canon, the super lab was the crown jewel. In this timeline, do they need it? Maybe they build it sooner, but instead of under a laundry, maybe they build it under something else. The Los Pollos Hermanos distribution center, or maybe, just maybe, they hide it in plain sight at Madrigal's U.S. headquarters. The sheer audacity of cooking meth in a corporate office building. It fits the hidden in plain sight motif perfectly. And who is the head of the lab? Max. But he needs help. He needs a team. He hires chemists, legitimate ones. They run it like a pharmaceutical startup. This means there are NDAs, health benefits, 401ks for meth cooks. It's absurd. It's hilarious, and it's totally plausible. In the Gilligan verse, the conflict reaches a fever pitch when Eladio demands a sit-down. He is tired of the noise. He invites Gus, Max, and the Salamancas to a neutral location, not Mexico, the U.S. border, a peace summit. This is the trap. Eladio intends to kill both sides and take over the operations himself with his own men. He thinks he's playing them. But Gus knows. Mike knows. This summit is the perfect opportunity for the general to execute his master plan. But things go wrong, because in the Breaking Bad universe, things always go wrong. The variable that Gus didn't account for is Hector's hatred. Hector doesn't want peace. He straps a bomb to himself, a suicide vest. This is the insane twist. Hector Salamanca, fully mobile, walking into a peace meeting with a bomb. He is willing to die to take out the chicken man. The explosion would be the cliffhanger of the century. The meeting room is decimated. Smoke, fire, ringing ears. Who survives? We see Gus crawling out of the rubble, half his face dusty but unburned, an inversion of his death scene. He looks for Max. He finds him injured, badly. This is the moment. The general holds his partner in the wreckage. Hector is dead, presumably. Lalo is missing in the chaos. Eladio is dead. The board has been wiped clean in a single, fiery instant. But the cost was high. Max is alive, but he is changed. Maybe he loses a limb. Maybe he is blinded. The physical toll mirrors the psychological toll. The Chicken Brothers have won the war, but they are broken. And from the ashes of this explosion, the news reports start. Gang war erupts on border. Terrorist attack or cartel violence. And watching this news report, sitting in his living room, coughing into a handkerchief, is a high school chemistry teacher named Walter White. He watches the chaos, he sees the power, and for the first time, a seed is planted. Not of financial desperation, but of chaotic opportunity. The king is wounded, the throne is shaky, and maybe, just maybe, there is room for a new player after all. The survival of Lalo Salamanca is the Easter egg we have to keep an eye on. If he wasn't found in the rubble, he's out there. A Lalo with nothing to lose, no family left, no cartel to report to. He becomes a phantom, the Joker to Gus's Batman. He will haunt the rest of this series. He isn't fighting for territory anymore. He is fighting for pure anarchic revenge. He will burn everything Gus loves. And what does Gus love? Max. The final boss of this timeline isn't the DEA. It isn't Walt. It's a rogue Lalo hunting them from the shadows. So, Chapter 3 ends with the landscape decimated. The Salamancas are ostensibly destroyed, except for the missing Lalo. Eladio is gone. The cartel is headless. Gus and Max are the undisputed kings of the South, but they are bleeding. They have ascended to the throne, but the throne is built on a pile of dynamite. And in the distance, the cancer diagnosis is coming for Walt. The timelines are about to intersect in the most unexpected way possible. The stage is set for the Heisenberg anomaly to enter a world that doesn't need him, doesn't want him, and is far too dangerous for him. Or so it seems. Because never underestimate a man with nothing to lose and a degree in crystallography. We have fast-forwarded the tape to the year 2008. The timeline has settled, but the world looks drastically different from the pilot episode we all know by heart. In this reality, the War of the Border is a history lesson. The Salamancas are a memory, burnt to ash in that legendary explosion. Don Eladio is gone. The cartel, as a monolithic entity, has fractured into smaller, warring factions south of the border. But north of the border, in Albuquerque, it is the Pax Fring. Peace, order, silence. Gus Fring and Max Arciniega have achieved the impossible. They have built a drug empire that runs with the efficiency of Amazon and the cleanliness of a surgical ward. But there is a cost. Max is alive, yes, but he bears the scars of the war. Picture this. Max Arciniega, the once vibrant and youthful chemist, now walks with a cane, or perhaps he has lost an eye, a constant physical reminder of the violence that birthed their success. Gus treats him like fragile porcelain. The general has retired his fatigues and put the suit back on, but his paranoia is dialed up to 11. They live in a fortress. They are the invisible kings of the Southwest. And their product? It's not just meth. It's a brand. It's the blue sky, or perhaps crystal clear in this timeline. And it is the undisputed gold standard. Enter Walter Hartwell White. The diagnosis hits him just like in the canon. Lung cancer, inoperable, 2 years to live. The clock starts ticking, but when Walt rides along with Hank Schrader for a drug bust, he doesn't see a meth lab in a suburban house run by amateurs. He sees a Fring distribution node being taken down. And it's not sloppy, it's high-tech. He sees vacuum-sealed packages. He sees cash-counting machines. He sees a level of professionalism that sparks something in his brain. In the original timeline, Walt broke bad out of desperation and a feeling that he could do better than the idiots like Captain Cook. In this timeline, Walt looks at the Fring operation and feels envy. He sees a chemist out there, somewhere, who's being rewarded for his genius. He sees an empire built on science. And Walt, stuck in a high school classroom washing cars for extra cash, feels that familiar toxic burn of his ego. It's the gray matter complex all over again. Someone else is living the life he deserves. So Walt grabs Jesse Pinkman. But the dynamic is hilarious. Jesse is terrified. Yo, Mr. White, you don't mess with the Chicken Man's territory. They have drones, yo. They have satellites. Okay, maybe not satellites, but the street legend of Gus Fring is mythical. Jesse knows that the people who challenge Fring disappear. But Walt doesn't care. His pride is the driver. They go to the desert. They cook. And here is the mind-blowing scientific showdown. Max Arciniega is a genius, but he was self-taught in many ways, or at least not a Nobel contributor-level academic like Walt. Max's product is 96%, maybe 97% on a perfect day. It's excellent. It's glass grade. But Walt produces that 99.1% pure crystal on his first try in a rusty RV. He looks at the shard and he knows. He hasn't just cooked meth. He has beaten the king. This is chemistry, he says. And for Walt, that is a declaration of war. The distribution of this new, hyper-pure product sends a shockwave through the system. Mike Ehrmantraut, now the head of a massive security apparatus that rivals Blackwater, picks up on it immediately. Gus, we have a problem. Someone is stepping on our product, and it's better. Imagine the look on Gus Fring's face. He isn't angry. He is offended. He takes it personally because Max is the cook. To insult the product is to insult Max. He brings the sample to Max. Max analyzes it. The scene between them would be heartbreaking and tense. Max, the artist, admitting that someone out there is better than him. The chirality. It's perfect, Gustavo. Whoever did this is a master. This triggers Gus's protective instinct. He doesn't want to hire this new cook. He wants to eliminate him. He sees this Heisenberg not as an asset, but as a threat to Max's self-worth and the stability of their empire. This is where the what-if takes a dark turn. In canon, Gus needed Walt. Here, he doesn't. He has a monopoly. He has Max. Walt is just a pest, so Mike is sent to handle it. This changes the genre from a crime drama to a cat-and-mouse thriller. Walt and Jesse are being hunted by the most competent hitman in television history. They are dodging Mike's guys, barely surviving. Walt's MacGyver moments using fulminated mercury, phosphine gas, aren't used to intimidate Tuco. They are used to escape Mike's traps. It's a desperate run for survival. Walt realizes he has bitten off way more than he can chew. He isn't dealing with street thugs. He is dealing with a corporate death squad. But remember the Easter egg from the last chapter? Lalo's Salamanca, the ghost, the Joker. He is out there. He has been watching. He sees the blue hit the streets. He sees the Fring organization scramble. He realizes that the Chicken Man has a new enemy. And the enemy of my enemy is my best friend. Lalo finds Walt before Mike does. Imagine that meeting. Walt and Jesse cornered in the RV, expecting death. The door opens. It's not Mike. It's Lalo, with that $1 million smile, wearing a tropical shirt, looking like he just came from a vacation in hell. Hola, you guys are hard to find. Lalo doesn't want to kill them. He wants to weaponize them. He looks at Walt's product and laughs. This is going to make Gustavo cry. I love it. Lalo becomes the patron of Heisenberg. This is the team-up we never knew we needed. Chaos and ego. Lalo offers protection. He offers his own network of old-school contacts, the remnants of the cartel that hate Fring. He tells Walt, "You want to be the king? I can help you take the crown. But we have to burn the castle down first." Walt, desperate and seduced by Lalo's flattery and the promise of being recognized as the best, agrees. They form an unholy alliance. Jesse is the only one screaming, "This is a bad idea. That guy is crazy." But Walt is intoxicated. He has a backer. He has a shot at the title. Meanwhile, inside the Fring fortress, the tension is suffocating. Max is spiraling. The existence of the superior product is eating at him. He starts experimenting, taking risks, trying to match Walt's purity. He causes an explosion in the lab, a small one, but enough to scare Gus. Gus realizes that Heisenberg is destroying them psychologically before he even destroys them financially. Gus decides to go full general. He mobilizes his sleeper agents. He uses his DEA connections. He calls Hank Schroeder. "Agent Schroeder, I have a tip about a mobile meth lab." Gus Fring, the drug lord, trying to get Walter White arrested by his own brother-in-law to remove the competition. That is the ultimate irony. But Lalo is one step ahead. Lalo knows Gus talks to the DEA. Lalo orchestrates a distraction, a massive, chaotic event in the city to pull law enforcement away. Maybe he blows up a magical warehouse. Lalo thrives in chaos. He creates a smoke screen so Walt can cook, and they don't cook in an RV anymore. Lalo takes them to a kill house, a hidden bunker. He forces Walt to cook massive quantities. He starts flooding the market with Heisenberg Blue at a discount price. He is practically giving it away just to crash Fring's stock. It's economic terrorism. And on every baggie, Lalo draws a little smiling face. A taunt. The climax of this chapter revolves around the first face-to-face meeting between the two titans of chemistry, Walter White and Max Arciniega. Lalo arranges it. He captures Max. It's a kidnapping, pure and simple. He snatches Max from under Mike's nose, a feat that proves Lalo's genius. He brings Max to the bunker where Walt is cooking. He forces them to talk. "Go on," Lalo says, eating popcorn. "Talk science." It's a surreal, tense scene. Walt, arrogant and dismissive. Max, humble but brilliant. They start arguing about formulas, about reduction methods. Walt realizes Max is the chicken man's cook. He realizes this is the guy he's been jealous of, but he also sees Max's injuries. He sees the fear. And for a fleeting moment, Walt feels a pang of something. Not pity, but recognition. They are both slaves to their own genius. But Gus is coming. You do not take Max Arciniega and expect Gus Fring to sit idly by. The general unleashes hell. He puts on the tactical gear. He grabs a weapon. We are finally going to see the Gus Fring from the flashbacks, the soldier. He leads a raid on Lalo's bunker. Mike is at his side. It's absolute carnage. The battle of the bunker. Lalo is defending. Gus is attacking. Walt and Jesse are caught in the crossfire, hiding under the tables while beakers shatter and bullets fly. This is the action movie version of Breaking Bad. In the chaos, Walt makes a choice. He sees an opportunity to escape, but he also sees Max, cowering, unable to run because of his leg. Walt looks at the exit, then looks at his rival. Does he save him? In the canon, Walt watched Jane die. In this timeline, does he let Max die? It would be the easiest way to become the king. If Max dies, the competition is gone. But Walt needs to be acknowledged as the best. Killing him is too easy. Beating him is better. Walt actually helps Max. He drags him to cover. Your reduction method is flawed, Walt grunts, while reloading a revolver he picked up. You're using too much aluminum. Even in a gunfight, he has to critique the chemistry. It's peak Walt. Lalo sees the tide turning. Gus is breaching the inner sanctum. Lalo smiles. Time to go. He vanishes through a bolt hole, leaving Walt and Jesse to face the wrath of Gus. The door kicks open. The smoke clears. Gus Fring stands there, assault rifle in hand, eyes filled with cold fire. He sees Walt. He sees Max alive, next to Walt. The dynamic is incredibly complex. Walt saved Max. Gus owes him, but Walt is the threat. The air is thick with tension. Mike enters, gun trained on Walt's head. Say the word, Gus. This is the pivotal moment. Does Gus kill Walt? He wants to. Every cell in his body screams to eliminate the variable, but Max speaks up. He saved me, Gustavo, and he's right about the aluminum. The chemist in Max respects the chemist in Walt. This hesitation saves Walt's life. Gus lowers the weapon just an inch. Who are you? Gus asks, the voice of death itself. Walt stands up, adjusting his glasses, dusting off his shirt, and delivers the line that defines the series, but with a new context. I'm the man who fixed your formula. The chapter ends with a new, uneasy paradigm. Lalo is in the wind, a chaotic force plotting his next move. The Fring Empire has been breached, and Walter White hasn't been killed. He has been hired, not as a low-level cook, but as a consultant, a prisoner king. Gus brings Walt into the fold, keeping his enemies closer than ever. Imagine the friction. Walt and Max working in the same lab, the ego battles, the passive-aggressive notes, and lurking in the background, the knowledge that Lalo is out there, and he knows where they are. And the DEA, Hank Schrader just found a piece of the blue meth at the explosion site, and it has a fingerprint on it, a fingerprint that belongs to a dead man, or at least a man who doesn't exist. Lalo left a clue. He planted evidence to expose Gus's Chilean identity. The past is finally catching up, and the walls are closing in from all sides. The general is about to face a war on two fronts, the ghosts of Chile and the monster of ego that is Walter White. We have arrived at the end game, folks, the final chapter of a saga that has completely rewritten the DNA of Breaking Bad. The board is set for a collision so catastrophic that it makes the face-off finale look like a polite disagreement. We have the unholy trinity of meth working under one roof. Gus Fring, the logistical genius, Max Arciniega, the heart and soul of the operation, and Walter White, the ego-driven chemist who has just been brought into the fold not as a king, but as a consultant. And circling this powder keg is Lalo Salamanca, the agent of pure chaos, holding the match that is about to burn the entire Southwest to the ground. You can feel the tension, right? It is thick enough to cut with a box cutter. The dynamic inside the Fring secret lab, which in this timeline is likely a state-of-the-art facility hidden within the bowels of a Madrigal subsidiary, is absolutely toxic. Walt is in heaven because he has the equipment, but he is in hell because he has to share the spotlight. He is watching Max cook. He is seeing the flaws in Max's technique, and he can't help himself. "You're burning the yield," Walt sneers, adjusting a valve with that classic Heisenberg arrogance. Max, who is still recovering from his injuries, takes it with grace. He is the good guy here. But Gus is watching from the gantry. He sees the efficiency going up. He sees the purity hitting 99.6%. But he also sees the cancer. Not the lung cancer in Walt, but the cancer of pride that Walt is introducing into their family. Gus knows that two kings cannot rule one kingdom. But the real threat isn't inside the lab. It's inside an envelope sitting on Hank Schrader's desk. Lalo Salamanca didn't just disappear. He went nuclear. He spent his time in the shadows, digging up the one thing Gus thought was buried forever: the Santiago file. This is the generalissimo theory finally paying off in the most epic way possible. Lalo sends the proof to the DEA. Not drugs, not money, but a dossier. Photos of a younger Gus in a military uniform. Redacted CIA documents. Records of human rights violations in Chile during the Pinochet regime. Hank opens this file, and his world shatters. He realizes that the chicken man, the guy who donates to the police fund, isn't just a drug dealer. He is a ghost from the Cold War. He is a monster with a pedigree. This changes the stakes of the investigation instantly. It goes from a local drug bust to a federal manhunt involving Homeland Security. The heat is on. Sirens are wailing in the distance. The walls of the Fring fortress are no longer high enough. Gus gets the call. Maybe it's from a mole in the DEA, or maybe it's Lydia Rodart Quayle screaming in panic. They know who you are, Gustavo. They know about Santiago. For the first time in the entire history of this character, we see genuine fear. Not for himself. He made peace with death long ago, but for Max. If the feds take Gus, they take everything. They expose Max. They destroy the life they built. Gus has to make a decision that breaks his heart. They have to run. The disappearer, Ed Galbraith, is the only option. But you don't just disappear an empire. You have to burn it down, so no one else can have it. Gus orders the scorched earth protocol. Mike is tasked with destroying the lab, the evidence, the servers. It is the end of an era, but Lalo is waiting for this moment. He knows that when a rat runs, it leaves its hole. Lalo intercepts the extraction. This leads to the climatic set piece of our What If saga, the siege of the lab. Lalo, leading a crew of mercenaries he likely paid for with stolen Fring money, breaches the facility just as Mike, Walt, Max, and Gus are prepping to leave. It is a four-way standoff of legendary proportions. Gunfire erupts in the Cathedral of Chemistry. Glass vats shatter, spilling millions of dollars of precursor fluid onto the floor. The blue liquid mixes with blood. It is visually stunning. Mike is doing his John Wick thing, taking out mercenaries with clinical precision. Gus is beside him, firing back, protecting Max with his own body. But Walt? Walt is hiding. Walt is watching the lab, his lab in his mind, being destroyed, and he sees Lalo cornering them. Lalo is laughing, enjoying the symphony of destruction. He yells out, "General, come out. Let's talk about the old days." Here is the twist that will haunt you, the moment where the character of Walter White is truly defined in this timeline. Max is pinned down. He is injured, unable to move quickly. A fire, started by a stray bullet hitting a gas line, is spreading toward him. Walt is close enough to help. He is close enough to drag Max to safety. Gus is occupied holding off Lalo. Walt looks at Max. He looks at the rival who stood between him and the crown. In the canon, Walt let Jane die to save Jesse and himself. In this timeline, Walt makes a calculation. If Max survives, Gus will always choose Max. Max will always be the head cook. But if Max dies, the position is open. The Heisenberg darkness takes over. Walt hesitates. He adjusts his glasses. He turns away. He lets the fire separate them. It is a moment of pure, cold cowardice and ambition. Max screams for help. Gus hears him. Gus turns, his eyes widening in horror. He sees Walt standing there, doing nothing. He sees the fire engulf the gantry. "Max!" The scream that rips from Gus Fring's throat is primal. It is the sound of a soul breaking. He abandons cover. He runs through the bullets toward Max. But it is too late. The structure collapses. Max Arciniega, the love of his life, the reason for his empire, the moral compass of the show, is gone, crushed under the weight of the ambition that surrounded him. Gus falls to his knees in the middle of the firefight. He is broken. He is done. Lalo steps out from the smoke, gun raised, ready to end the chicken man once and for all. "Adios, Gustavo." He pulls the trigger. Click. Empty. Lalo looks at his gun, confused. And then a shadow moves behind him. It's Mike. A single shot rings out. Lalo drops. The Joker is dead. But the punchline isn't funny. The victory is hollow. The silence that follows is deafening. The sirens are getting closer. The DEA is minutes away. Mike grabs Gus. "We have to go. Now." Gus is catatonic. He is staring at the burning rubble. Mike has to physically drag him away. They move toward the secret exit. But what about Walt? Walt is standing there, coughing in the smoke, clutching a notebook, Max's notebook. He stole the formula. He stole the legacy. Mike looks at Walt with pure disgust. He raises his gun to kill him. He knows Walt let Max die. He saw the hesitation. "You piece of shit," Mike growls. But Gus stops him, a hand on the barrel. Gus's voice is a whisper, void of all humanity. No, death is too easy for him. Gus looks at Walt with dead eyes. Let him stay. Let him be the king of the ashes. Gus and Mike vanish into the tunnels, heading for the vacuum repair van, heading for a new life in obscurity, haunted by ghosts. Walt is left alone in the burning lab. The DEA breaches the doors. Hank Schrader kicks his way in, gun drawn. Federal agents, drop it. And who do they find? They don't find the general. They don't find the Chilean warlord. They find a high school chemistry teacher, covered in soot, holding a notebook, surrounded by dead bodies and destroyed equipment. Hank lowers his gun, his jaw hitting the floor. Walt? The epilogue of this what if is a grim look at the future. Gus Fring is never seen again. He becomes a true myth, a boogeyman story told by criminals. He is alive, somewhere in South America perhaps, a hollow shell of a man, waiting to die, forever punishing himself for failing to save Max a second time. The tragedy is absolute. Fate decreed that Max must die, for Gus to be Gus, and even in an alternate universe, the universe corrected itself. The pool scene happened just 20 years later, in a lab instead of a hacienda. And Walt gets his wish. He gets the credit. He becomes famous. The media dubs him the meth kingpin. He is arrested, tried, and convicted. He is the face of the operation. He gets the notoriety he craved. But he sits in a supermax prison, dying of cancer, knowing the truth. He knows he didn't build it. He knows he was just a vulture picking at the carcass of a genius. He has no money to leave to his family. Schuyler and Junior are horrified and destitute. The assets seized. He has no respect from his peers. He is just a criminal. He sits in his cell, looking at a drawing of a fly on the wall, realizing that he won the game. But the prize was a cage. The final shot of our series would be hauntingly beautiful. We pan over the ruins of the burnt-out lab. The smoke clears. We see a piece of equipment, a charred spectroscope, with a sticker on it, Propiedad de los Pollos Hermanos. The camera moves past it, down into the dirt, where a single blue crystal lies gleaming in the darkness, perfect, pure, and deadly. The legacy of the Chicken Brothers is dead. The chaos of Heisenberg is contained, and the world keeps spinning, indifferent to the brilliance and the madness that just consumed itself. So, what have we learned from this insane journey? We learned that you can change the timeline, you can move the pieces, but you cannot escape who you are. Gus is a man defined by loss. Walt is a man defined by ego. Lalo is a man defined by chaos. And Max was the angel who flew too close to the sun. The question, what if Gus never met Don Eladio, gives us a world that is louder, bloodier, and perhaps even more tragic than the one we know. It shows us that the Chicken Man was holding back the darkness for decades, and without that initial trauma to focus him, the darkness consumed everyone. It is a reminder of the genius of Breaking Bad. Every action has a reaction, and chemistry is the study of change. But some reactions are irreversible. And that, my friends, is the story of the timeline where the pool remained clean. Thank you for taking this ride into the multiverse with me. It has been a mind-blowing experience connecting these dots. Until next time, keep cooking. Theories, that is.